Henderson. Ryan has him at 20. Keoni has him at 12.
Round 1, fight.
Listen, he's just a guy. It's a good matchup, but him and Royce Freeman are both sharing this backfield. I'm not going to rely on Darrell Henderson getting a touchdown, especially with a hurt Matthew Stafford. And if Matthew Stafford doesn't play, then it's Brett Ripplen, and that offense is going to suck. So I mean, it's just pretty obvious. Either they're going to suck with the hurt Matthew Stafford, or they're going to suck with the Brett Ripplen. And I just think, what's his name?
Brett Ripien.
Oh, Ripien? Oh, okay. Well, hey, listen. If you didn't suck so much, maybe I said your name right. I'm just kidding, bro. I apologize. I should stop saying you guys suck. But the offense is not a really good run-first offense. They are good at getting running backs touchdowns. I've been saying it all year long with Kyren Williams. Darren Henderson really isn't, like, he's just not efficient. I think 3.1 yards per carry. Royce Freeman had more yards per carry last week. Again, he got the touchdown. Henderson had, 3 receptions for over 50 yards or whatever it was. And that was a lot. The week before, 1 reception for 5 yards. So it's not really a consistent role. We don't know who's the main back. To say he is going to be a top RB, a RB1, is the ultimate reach of reaches. And this guy didn't even score a touchdown last week. So I don't know what guy in your eye who was like, hey, this guy's good. He was on the street a few weeks ago because he's not good. So I would just say, hey, let's settle down. He's maybe RB2. It's hard to do, RB20 to RB30 is really just all the same. That's what category he is in. And that's what he'll stay in the rest of the season.
Well, since starting in place of Kyren Williams, Darrell Henderson has been a relatively middle of the pack, but solid RB2 versus some stout defenses in Pittsburgh and especially the Dallas Cowboys. In those 2 games, he had 19 and 15 touches respectively, so he's getting a good amount of work. In week 8, he did have 3 receptions, so he's getting some passing down work, which is nice to see in a running back. He hasn't put up super solid numbers, I will agree with that, being the RB 17 and 19, again, better than RB 20. He did get a touchdown in week 7 and had 85 total yards in week 8. So he finds ways to kind of balance things out, whether it's with a touchdown or getting a good amount of yards on receptions. However, this week he got a much better matchup versus the Packers, who are ranked 27th versus the position in fantasy. They have allowed the 7th most rushing yards per game to running backs. I think it's like over 130 yards per game, and have given up 6 touchdowns to running backs, which is bottom 10 on the league so far. I think if he's able to produce decent numbers for tough opponents, then he can finish as a low-end RB1 versus a very bad Packers team who just doesn't have anything together at this point. Now, Stafford being hurt, I think it makes them rely a little bit more on the run game, which is a good thing for him, because if you can't pass, what is the other option? You run. Or if he can't pass far, then you pass it short to your running back. I like him this week and think he can just break into RB1 territory. Again, this I think is his ceiling. This is the best he is probably going to get. Is this number 12, but it's mostly matchup based and will likely need to get a touchdown or have a good amount of receptions to be able to do it. I think he can do at least one of those things, but facing this defense, I think there's a chance he does both, which is why I have him breaking into wide receiver or RB1.
So Keoni has George Pickens of the Steelers as a wide receiver 2, and then he has Diontae Johnson outside of the top 36.
It's like he is 36.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Ryan has it reversed. Ryan believes Diontae Johnson's the top wide receiver
At 26.
Pickens is out of that range. So they're each going to defend why
Pickens
they
at
believe,
37.
Yeah, they're gonna each defend why they believe their player is more likely to go off than the other. So
Round 2. Fight.
So we both understand that either Kenny Pickett or Trubisky is going to produce one fantasy relevant wide receiver in this Thursday night matchup. Tennessee is not a great defense versus the pass. We know that. Versus wide receivers, they let people score on them. Okay. Johnson comes back, and what does he do? Dominate targets once again. Okay. George Pickens 2 weeks ago, when Johnson first comes back, gets more receptions, gets 2 more targets. That's a great job. Again, Johnson first week back, 5 receptions, 6 targets, 79 yards. Week 2, he comes back. Number 1. Pickens, 1 reception. What? How many yards? 5, 10,
20.
somewhere around there. I'm not worried about that. Diontae Johnson, 8. 14 targets. 85 yards. But listen, the offense is bad. It was rainy. We understand. Diontae Johnson has a skill that Pickens does not have, and that's actually getting open. He runs routes that produce fantasy relevant points. You can run all the streaks and all the posts you want. Mitchell Trubisky is not hitting you on that. Okay? If it's Kenny Pickett, you get 1. If it's a hurt Kenny Pickett, you get a bad one. I don't believe that George Pickens' role in this offense, and I'm not saying it's his talent. His talent is great. I hope they fire Matt Canada and that he's able to have an offense that can use him in different roles. But Johnson's the main guy in the offense. It is obvious. And if you are going to be the main guy in the offense, you are going to be the main guy getting targets, especially in a team that's probably going to score 17 points. We know the Titans and the Steelers both like to muck it up. What is the over-under on this game? 41 at most, like are either team scoring over 20 points? So I think in this low scoring game, Johnson the guy you want.
So, as we've said, we have these players basically opposite from each other, and you might think Johnson should be the lead guy, seeing as he's been a top 24 wide receiver the past 2 weeks with 20 targets between those games and an average of 82 yards per game in that span. But you know who else knows that? The Tennessee Titans. So, having that knowledge at their disposal, and the professionally paid coaches that they are and players, they are going to cover Johnson very, very well, which leaves more room for George Pickens to get receptions and find his way into the end zone, which he did in week 8 after powering through a double tackle. Now, while Pickens only caught 1 of his 5 targets in week 8, he made it count in finding the end zone. So, while he did finish outside the top 36, he knew he was setting himself up to be more open versus the Titans, which is where he will return to his wide receiver 2 status in fantasy over Diontae Johnson for this week. Now, Diontae Johnson may be the better play as the season progresses, but Pickens, his trap will take effect this week, and they will shower him with the golden plunder of a top 24 fantasy performance, unlike Diontae Johnson.